Hello, everybody. Welcome to the viewers at home and to people in the room. I'm really excited to talk about personal development, and I guess we'll also get the FaceTime going, right? As well. Perfect. Bam, bam. Action. So yeah, let's jump in. So this is a workshop with lots of anticipation and hype. I think we've delayed it for like 2 months because we've been so damn busy. So I'm excited for us to have an opportunity to slow down and not even really talk about work, but talk about ourselves and how we can improve as individuals, both for work but also for our personal lives. So I'm gonna talk about igniting your potential. And there's sort of like three things that I want you to get out of it. I think the first thing with any kind of, I've read a lot of books on personal development, been to a lot of workshops. Everyone always talks about just mindset and attitude. Like that's really just the biggest thing. And it's something you won't get overnight, but it's something you can start to be aware about and build over time. And that's really just the foundation. After that, it's about, I want to kind of set a painted picture for you on how to be in the right environment. Like, once you have your mindset and you know where you want to go and who you want to be around, it's about actually getting yourself in that environment. And then lastly, if you want to actually be tactical about things, there's ways to actually sort of be strategic on what habits you build. And there's something called the 90-day year, which is a way of looking at your year in 90-day sprints. So instead of having resolutions once a year, and usually they're kind of something you forget about 45 days in, here's a way to not wait a whole year to sort of like think of your life again, but you can actually do it more often. And then I've got some habits and resources again that I think will be great. So let's jump in. First thing here is called a personal mission statement, and you usually see it with companies, and it's like this this compass of where you want to go. And a lot of public speakers and personal development coaches say that this is the most important thing for you to have kind of firmly in your head, just because you've got to be heading in a certain direction. And when you know what your personal mission statement is and what you really stand for and just things that get you excited, it's really easy to know how to say no to things that are not the right opportunities, and also how to navigate towards things that you like. For me, I won't read the whole thing, but generally I love to connect people, and I think that reflects in not only my business, right, but the things that I do. And I think the reason that I like to connect people is because as you connect people, you can help each other align on a common mindset, right? Be equally motivated, and that's a way for you to just make things happen. And I think that when you make things happen, you sort of, you make an impact in the world in whatever way you want to. You inspire people, right? And I think inspiration is the ultimate thing. If you can inspire people to do something they didn't think was possible before, that's the way people progress and grow, right? So I love to expedite that and be a catalyst for it. And then sort of, when I look back in my life, what I'm going to look at is who did I inspire? How much did I inspire them? What did they do with that inspiration? And more importantly, did they pass on the inspiration to someone else? And I've kind of called it your net inspiration score. At the end of the day, a legacy is about how many people have you inspired, and if they've then taken your methodology or your message and used to inspire others, then your legacy lives on. And it's just about, will you be remembered? And if you are, what's it going to be for? So with me, I hope it's going to be around connecting people and using that as a way to inspire people. I think, that's the ultimate way to do it, and that's with me, of course. And I'm sure you have probably a less philosophical mission statement, or you have just a completely different way of looking at life, and that's awesome. But if you can just take an hour to just kind of write something out and just have it, and tweak it over time, it's a nice thing to when you have one of those days where you're flustered and you just feel like you're all over the place. Just look at your mission statement and be like, wow, am I following that? Just read it. It takes you 30 seconds. And then a nice condensed way of also looking at it is just through your personal values. So I've got 6 different values here that I think represent me. And you can do the same thing. What are 6 things you're passionate about? And it's kind of like your life in a tweet almost. which, if you have that in your mind, it's easy to navigate your life. And also, whenever you're writing any kind of bios or doing things on your resume or LinkedIn, it's something you can actually draw on. So I think that's really the first thing to do in any kind of personal growth, is they always tell you, like, what are you passionate about, and can you articulate that, and can you articulate it to people? Because at the end of the day, that's how you attract like-minded people, right? So that's a personal mission statement. And as you all know, I went through a course called Landmark. It's a 3-day course. It's from like 8 in the morning to 10 p.m. It's like full-on day, 3 days. And I'm not going to do it justice here, but if I can give you guys my main learnings in a slide, might save you a lot of money and time. By no means is this a replacement for Landmark, but I figure I'd just give you my learnings, and if you're more curious, obviously there's a lot of ways to get involved. So the first thing they talked about was sort of the stories that we tell ourselves versus actual reality. So one of our leaders talked about how it's like the dumbest thing, but it's so true on how, we probably have parallel stories. When she was a kid on the farm, her mom was making sandwiches. She's making like beef sandwiches and PB&J sandwiches. And she gave the really hearty beef sandwiches to all of her siblings, and she got stuck with a PB&J sandwich. She thought it was because her mom didn't value her as much as her siblings, and like she was just really pissed off from that moment forward. And then later on, when there's other instances where maybe her mom was favoring others, she just thought to herself, well, the story that I'm living in is that I'm not good enough for my mom, so no matter what happens, I'll never be prioritized. And then she started interpreting things as silly as that sandwich example for the rest of her life as her mom being against her. And like one day she confronts her mom and asks her about that. And her mom was like, yo, like I just ran out of beef. And I thought you'd like this because it's more healthy, or it's a bit more, it's less meat.
Or you never complained.
Sorry?
Or she never complained.
Well, that's the problem. She didn't ask for clarification, right? So anyway,
Maybe she was a girl. She didn't think she'd like eating cows. Girls.
Yeah, who knows, right? For whatever reason it was, in her mindset, it was around like, I'm not good enough. And that's a story that I'm going to live in the rest of my life. And maybe you have a parallel where you've had a moment that happens, you interpret it in whatever way you interpret it. You might be right, who knows? But then you kind of tell yourself that story, and then you suddenly bias yourself. So in the future, you're looking at the world through a lens of a story that you've made up. When in reality, it could be completely different. So it kind of made me look at my life and think about like biases that I have with relationships, things that I do. And I've realized that sometimes you just catch yourself in your own head as opposed to like what is reality. So I thought that was a really interesting, thing to look at. That like, where do you create stories for yourself versus what's actually reality? That's the first concept they really talk about. They have a whole like morning around just stating how the length that people go to look good in front of others. Just like the persona you put, the clothes that you wear, like the things you say. Even related to the first example, maybe she didn't want to tell her mom she didn't want to look weak by being like, hey, like why didn't I get a beef sandwich? Maybe that was also a reason. She just didn't want to confront her, right? So basically, when you try to look good, it'll make you sometimes inauthentic. And also, it might actually scare you from asking for the truth or reality. And when you don't do that, then you get into the story I talked about, right? So that's just the thing that they emphasize, that always acknowledge you're always trying to look good. Everyone always is, but don't do it to a point where you're doing things inauthentically or you're not speaking up. Because end of the day, like looking good has a cost, a very big cost, right?
When you go shopping, that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the few exceptions. They talk about inauthenticities, which I'll talk about it in an example in the next slide. But again, related to trying to look good, like where are you being inauthentic? And the trick here is how do you catch yourself being inauthentic, which isn't always the easiest thing. Bullet 4, they talk about, it's called running rackets. I won't talk about really the why they chose that word, but basically, if I can give you the meaning of it, they basically say that whenever you make a fuss out of something, you actually do it for selfish reasons. Right? And here's why, right? When let's say, the examples they brought up in our forum was, this one girl, her boyfriend kept leaving his underwear on the floor. And like, no matter what she did, he just wouldn't get out of that habit. And fair enough, that's really annoying. But they said to her, like, if you actually look deeper, why do you keep making a fuss out of it? And like, what's the inner reason of why you're actually making a fuss out of it? And they had like a chart, and they said basically, when you,
Disgusting.
yes, that's more the practical reason, but there was actually a deep reason to it. What they said was, when you make a fuss out of something, when you kind of pick a battle, you're really trying to do a few things to the other person. You're trying to prove that they're wrong. You're trying to dominate them because you don't want to be dominated. You're trying to make them feel bad to make yourself feel good. They kind of had like all these sort of dark reasons on like things that you actually it's part of why you make them feel bad, and there's a cost to that. Like it might feel good because yeah, like you're right, they're wrong, what's up, but the cost of that is that you end up tarnishing your relationship. You end up just being stressed out yourself, and it's just never really a good outcome. So they kind of made us do an exercise around like what things you commonly make a fuss of, like with your spouse or with your family or your colleagues, whatever. And they're like, okay, like really think deep into, yes, like maybe a quarter of that is like you're right, like they're wrong, but most of that is because you're just trying to look good, you're trying to dominate them, which is actually a little bit unproductive. And if you look at the cost to your relationship and your stress, it's completely not worth it. So the big takeaway from that was pick your battles and like just try to realize that when you're trying to make someone feel bad, it's because you're being a bit insecure in a way, right? And then anyways, they made go really deep into that, and it's just something to think about, like where do you run your rackets or where do you make a fuss, and like really like why are you doing it, and what's the result? What does it cost you with that person and with yourself? So that's rackets. And they also talked about, and this has been a theme for all these 4 points here, is we're meaning-making machines, that we love to make meaning out of things that in reality don't really have meaning, right? Like the sandwich example. It was a very practical reason for her to get a PB&J sandwich. They ran out of beef, that was that. She made a huge meaning out of it, and then she biased herself. And for like 20 years, her and her mom had a bad relationship. Go figure, right? So that's something that it's okay to acknowledge that. We are meaning-making machines, we have to be. But if you're really good at understanding like when you're making something up that in reality probably is different versus you're interpreting something correctly and it's you're giving it meaning, it's a really awesome skill to develop because it's going to save you a lot of stress and it's going to help you navigate your life better, right? This is a really cool one. It's called the Genesis of Identity. So the last point here is they say that in your life you have sort of like 3 things that you kind of go through that actually that like life-changing events that start to build your strengths around like what you do now. So they say that at one point you realize you're not enough. Something happens at school, someone bullies you, someone says you're too short. Something happens where like you're not enough of something. So the rest of your life you try to be really good at that, right? So for example, if you were really skinny in school and you got made fun of, then like you might be like a super athlete later on because like you just want to prove them wrong essentially, which leads to the racket thing. But anyways, in some ways it can be good, right? Why not prove people wrong? It's good motivation, right? Especially if it's something that you're passionate about. The other one's around bless you. Bless you. The other one's around not belonging. So similar to the not being enough, not belonging is like you go, you're playing sports again, and nobody picks you when they're, you're lined up against the fence, and like it's pretty brutal, right? So nobody picks you, or like you move to a new city and like no one talks to you. Like when I moved to Vancouver, I was pretty young, I was 4, but the first couple of years I couldn't speak any English. I'm like, yeah, like no one really talked to me in grade 1. It's just like, what are you doing, right? So anyways, you have these moments of the not belonging, and I guess when you don't belong, you then later on, you want to belong, and therefore you start being passionate about certain things and certain groups that you associate yourself with is because you're longing to belong, basically. And the last one is feeling like you're by yourself. So usually when people move out of their house, for example, or like if you're traveling and like suddenly you run out of money, you're like, shit, like my parents are, 4,000 kilometers away. Like I'm literally on my own. And that's sort of that moment where you want to be more independent, and it kind of builds up your personality of wanting to be more independent. It's when you feel like you're all alone. So anyways, these three things, and maybe you've thought of a couple examples yourself, are like kind of these life-defining moments that are sort of weaknesses or moments that aren't that pleasant, but they lead towards your strengths. So yeah, the more you get to acknowledge, a bit of your upbringing, you'll start to make sense of how your habits are now and your personality. A lot of it's just tied to like how you grew up. So anyways, again, this is an exercise that took a whole day, so don't be stressed if you can't think of any examples now. I still can't think of all my examples, but these were just things that they brought up, and it just helped you really kind of like put the whole picture together. And again, we had 3 days to let this digest. Like in like a 20-minute workshop, you're not going to get all this, but like just think of it as a crash course, and just plant it in your head for now, and later on, hopefully there'll be an opportunity to dive into it more. That's Landmark in a nutshell. Look at that.
Was that a typo? We are making machine or meaning?
Meaning.
What does that mean?
Like we make meaning out of inanimate objects. We make meaning out of holidays.
Yeah.
We make meaning out of someone stepping on our foot. Like it's because I'm wearing this color shirt. They hate that color shirt.
Or my shoes are white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't step on
That
my
guy's
shoes.
jealous of my shoes.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't step on my
Yeah, you got it. So, again, it's okay because usually there is.
That's how the human civilization evolved.
Yeah, no,
Started
exactly. Yeah.
thinking there are gods in the sky.
Yeah, and it's what makes us humans, but sometimes that can be a downfall. It can be something that sets you back. So
we sacrificed people at the altar because we thought God wanted us to do that.
exactly. The latest thing in Game of Thrones, I just saw one of the episodes when Stannis and his kid. Oh man, that was brutal. Anyways, spoiler alert. And I'm way behind, so I'm not spoiling anything. Okay, here's a really interesting statement that we actually, I think the first day we worked mainly on this, and it sort of it talks about how we just make meaning and how we try to look good all the time, and I guess the downfall of that is that we're inauthentic. So they really like made you think about your inauthenticities. So maybe you're already starting to get ahead of me and starting to read it, but I'll give you guys the high level. So basically, like, going into Landmark, I was pretending that I was okay with essentially deferring my health and personal life and being like, you know what, I'm fine not having a life. It's gonna work 14 hours a day, and that's it. I don't give a shit. Like, I'm gonna do that, and I'm okay with doing this for the next 5 years and then having a life later on. Like, I'm tough enough to just do this, and like I'm all for it. Whatever, let's do it, right? When in fact it wasn't really fulfilling, obviously, and I started to realize that it's having a bit of a tax on me, right? So the impact was that being inauthentic in this way, it makes you lonely. It makes you especially hard on yourself and hard on others. And that's where I told you guys this right after my Landmark forum that it sort of made sense on why I was on the edge, or I was you could feel it at work that I was just a bit on the edge and just resentful. And really I was resentful of myself in a way, right? So it's done a lot of my personal relationships, and again, it just made me very impatient. And I mean, generally I'm not that patient, but I can be patient. It's a pendulum. But I think I was just impatient about everything there, and that was the result. I just was torturing myself, right? So the whole time, I've been acting and being that way. What I was missing out on was a sense of satisfaction, right? Deep relationships, loving myself, feeling alive, and the biggest thing was actually living today's dream is what I was missing, because I was living tomorrow's dream, and it was this vicious cycle because I'm prolonging, my personal and health life, whatever, those will just come after I get my corporate life down. But I realized is that as I was just all corporate, those things suffered, and therefore I suffered as a leader in the office. So then as I kind of didn't hit the goals I wanted, I would punish myself by not going out, and then I would get weaker and more impatient and not as creative. And suddenly I was like basically living this impossible dream of tomorrow's dream and torturing myself, which in turn made me less productive. And like, how the hell was I ever gonna get out of that, right? Like, basically I had to be like, hey, stop. I have to take care of myself to perform better and just to be a happy person. And that was my sort of big realization, which is a pretty big realization, right? Because I've been doing this for, a handful of years, since 2012. So, some entrepreneurs have got...
We saw that video of you dancing with the birthday cake.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Who the hell is that?
Yeah, that was in my young chap days. It hasn't been that bad. I think there's some entrepreneurs who literally burn out and they really hurt themselves. So I caught it in time, and it wasn't the end of the world. Like, I was still, we still were doing some great things, and I was still happy generally. But I realized that this is just a very unsustainable way of being, and if I kept doing this and I didn't sort of set parameters on or just boundaries on when I have to be with my family or like going for a run, it was gonna turn up in probably a bad result. So yeah, inauthenticities, things that you might want to think about, like what are things that you pretend you kind of show to the world, but deep inside you're like, shit, actually, this is the impact of me being inauthentic. Crap, I'm missing out on that. And you know what? If I could stand there and create a new possibility for myself, for me it was put personal life first, right? And work business around it, rather than the other way around. Because I want to improve a business and I want to be in a business and make it awesome to inspire people, right? Back to my mission statement. And also to have an awesome personal life and have a great health life, because that's what financial freedom does. It helps you live how you want to live, and it helps you allow others to live how they want to live, right? So it's all linked towards personal health, which I wasn't working towards, which is completely backwards. Completely. So things that I realized from that, and I think if you go through Landmark or if you think of some inauthenticities yourself, you might realize some things. So anyways, that was around.
For sharing.
Yeah, you bet. I'm happy to. I just, I'm an open book. More of a bit of vision setting now. Once you've kind of got that core of what's your mission statement? What are things that you're passionate about? And then you can kind of dig deep into some of your, maybe not your best qualities or things that you're being inauthentic in. As far as goal planning, goals are a funny topic. I think they can work against you if you take them too literally and you're too hard on yourself and you don't realize that goals are ever evolving and you'll never know the perfect goals. But also you've got to be shooting somewhere, right? If you're not actually aiming somewhere, you just let life kind of just happen, you're not going to get to where you want to be, because it's very easy to be comfortable, right? So here's an exercise that I learned, especially from the Lululemon exercise, and they say to you, simply put, think of a 10-year vision, where you want to be in 10 years. And once you can get that vision, right, of where you want to be in 10 years, and the best way I describe it is just think of a day of one perfect day, 10 years from now, right? So I don't know, you could be, I was in Barcelona. I woke up, 6 in the morning. It was a Saturday. I had my fiance, so I wasn't quite married yet, but I also, wasn't by myself, right? Put some thought into that. And then we go for a hike up Mount Tibidabo, which is this beautiful mountain in Barcelona. We go for a hike, we go for a run, we go for brunch in one of our hidden gem restaurants. We then go to TEDx. I give a TEDx speech in Barcelona. My parents fly over.
You would not sleep that night if you were doing a TED.
Huh?
You wouldn't sleep if you were doing a TED.
Maybe I'd practice. Who knows? I didn't get that deep, right? But after that, we went for kind of a ride around Barcelona on the boat. We had a dinner at my place. We made dinner for my family, some other TEDx speakers. We brought together some amazing minds. We inspired each other. After that, we went to the beach. They have a whole bunch of clubs there, and we got a private show from Armin van Buuren and a couple other great DJs that I like. And that was the night, right? So I'm giving you a very nutshell version, but when I actually and this is like a 2-hour exercise. You and a bottle of wine with cool music, just writing out your perfect day. And then when you just write it down, you read it and you just visualize it, and you're like, wow, that's where I want to go. So you get this very vivid picture of where you want to go. And then the way you sort of kind of deconstruct it is you say, okay, wow, out of that perfect day, what are some facts I can take out of it, right? So facts within 3 pillars, right? Personal life, health life, and career, right? So personal life, obviously, I want to be close to my family. I want to, have someone, I want to have a life partner. I want to be, going on hikes, which sort of falls into your health life. As you start to think about those facts from that perfect day, you start setting goals, right? And that's when you start to get a bit more tactical about it. So I'll dive into in the next slide, but that's sort of just the perfect day exercise to think of that 10-year vision. And then you bring it back, right? You say, okay, in 10 years, I want to be, sorry, Juliet? Oh, sorry. In 10 years, I want to have that perfect day. So therefore, if I want to be giving a TED speech in 10 years in Barcelona, I probably have to join Toastmasters today. Or maybe in 5 years, I'm not quite at TED level, but I'm giving workshops, maybe in any other different country.
Are you using a whiteboard?
No. Sure, you can jump in.
Sorry, it was bad.
That's all right.
Everybody took all the whiteboards. There is no whiteboard.
That's okay.
That's
Yeah.
sad, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Maybe a brief intermission.
See,
Do you want me to help you?
I'm good. Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah?
Great.
Alright, guys.
So
Thank you.
here's a template. You probably can't see it if you're tuning in, but if you have the slide deck with you, it basically tells you it's exactly what I've talked about. It's your perfect life in 10 years, so like your perfect day. Talks about some of your core concepts. Again, it's sort of like your vision statement, and you've literally got like your 10-year, 5 and 1 year goals, and you just write out 10 years from now, by June the 1st, 2026, I'm going to, in this case, give a TED Talk. And then again, you just work it, then you just trickle it back. That's really it. Just getting really clear about some ambitious goal you have, which may or may not happen. It doesn't matter, but you're shooting there, and then you just work it back. And you'll see that when you bring it back to today, there actually is a step you can do today to get towards that big vision. And you can apply this for anything. If you're going on that hike in Barcelona and you're really fit and you get up there super quickly, you're probably running marathons or triathlons or something, right? So you say, okay, if I want to be a really good hiker, I can go to the Chief this weekend. So it's just like tying future behavior to current behavior and then just trying stuff, right? But it's having that direction that's really important. Where it gets, I think, really practical, again, these are more just vision things, like that you kind of have them, they change over time. Don't stress about this thing changing because it will change probably every 90 days actually. And that's why I do something called 90-day sprints. So essentially, anything beyond 90 days is a vision, meaning that it's not something that really you can count on happening exactly the way you plan it to be. And it's an important thing to realize because people, again, do it like a yearly goal and then they don't get it or it falls off probably around 90 days or just before, and then you give up, right? And a year is a lot. Think about what's happened the last year from now. What have you done the last year? Could you have anticipated what you're doing now a year ago? Probably not. A lot happens in a year. So 90 days is a bit more tangible. And basically, what I've started to do now is I've kind of have my 10-year goal, 5-year, 1-year goals. I think about in 90 days, so quarters, right? January until end of March, right? April to end of June, etc. In those 90-day sprints, what can I do in a very focused way that I can act on today, right? And they say kind of set a theme to your quarter, and it's kind of the 80-20 rule. So yeah, for this quarter, my theme around at least fitness has been running, right? So I did the Sun Run. It was in April, and I have my half marathon Scotiabank end of the month, June 26th. That was kind of my theme for the month on fitness, and therefore I had 2 goals around getting certain times for both of those races in Q2. And yeah, here's just an example of kind of how I've been doing it. So I have my health goals, so run a half marathon under an hour and 28 minutes, which will be very tough, but we'll see what happens. And what I do is I kind of have a key activity of where I'm going to run that. So I was going to do actually the Whistler half marathon, which happens actually, I think, this weekend. I'm doing now the Scotiabank one. So again, it changed on how I was going to do it, but it's fine. I still found a half marathon that I want to do. And the most important part, I call it team goal setting. It's essentially once you're very clear on what you want to do in the next 90 days, that ties into your year, your 10-year vision, just find people that also want to do that. So I've got a couple friends, 2 Jeremys actually, and they're both great runners, especially Jeremy Leal. He does 120 kilometer mountain runs, crazy stuff, right? So we're going for a run today actually. And he's kind of a motivation for me to run with him. And last time we ran, he put this heart rate monitor on me, kind of around my chest, and he's got a watch. He's like, yeah, did you know that like for long-term running, you can't go too fast. You have to like go at a very scientific rate. So like, he's like, okay, like you have to go at you have to look at your max heart rate, which is 180 beats per minute, right? And then you have to minus 27, I think, from that, which is your age, right? Which is 153. So when you're running, if you go above 153, like you're spending too much energy. You're not gonna last in a long-term run. You've got to find a groove at 153 maximum, and then eventually you'll find over time that you'll be running faster and like covering a kilometer in a faster time with your heart rate at the same level. And that's like the way he trains. Anyways, like shit, I would never ever figure out by myself, and it's just the cross-pollination of actually working with people that have a common goal, and ideally they're way better than you at it, right? Because that way you learn. Now if they're way, way, way better and like it's just like they're leaving you in the dust, that works against you. But find someone who's the same or of more skill than you in whatever you're working towards, and just learn. And it's just, again, like the reason why you go for runs in the morning with someone is because if they weren't running with you, you probably wouldn't get up for the run. It's also an accountability thing. So I've actually pledged like basically my whole life, right? So meditation, I have a couple contacts that I want to meditate 10 to 20 minutes a day. And I've got a few friends who either work at like a meditation app company, or they've bought a subscription, or they're just really good at it. And like, yeah, I'll try to ask them once in a while, like, how do you do it? So David's saying he's a good meditator. Is that what I heard?
Yeah.
Great. So I'll get some tips from you. Right? But like, you basically have to get resources around you and knowledge from people that are in your network. And like, some of these people, like, they would never know to help in meditation, because like meditation is a thing that you don't really tell people. You just kind of do it. If you're like, hey, like my goal is to meditate 10 minutes a day this quarter. And someone's like, oh, cool, like I do that stuff. You want my free subscription to Headspace? Oh, yeah, I would. That's awesome. So the more you share about what you're doing with other people, the more they're going to help you, and the more the universe brings back to you. And that's just kind of basically the whole habit of goal setting, is you set an intention, and then you just enroll other people to help you with it, especially if they're already doing it.
I think David should
Right?
put on your goal setting for getting you hooked up with better tech.
Yeah, exactly. It's not exactly one of my priority goals, but but eventually get this. You mean hooked up with better tech? How so?
Like, he's just always giving you advice on like better and smarter ways to do things.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like that's something I need help in, and I appreciate that. Definitely props to David. Is it like my...
It's like almost daily I'll hear him giving you advice on something. You're like, oh yeah, okay.
And you as well, which is good, right? And like, I mean, that's something that's not like a big goal of mine. Like, if I was gonna work like as a, you know, I don't know, if I was gonna, it could have been a goal.
Iron Man, if you were building like an Iron Man suit.
Maybe, right?
I actually know a guy who's building a real life Iron Man thing. It's gonna be done in August.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to take it for a spin. What I'll say here is that I've got 3 goals that are like a must, and then I actually have back of mind goals.
If you really train for your marathons, well, maybe you'll be able to operate.
Well, I'll see, right? I hope I won't need it. So what I learned from the first quarter is that if you have too many goals that you have to absolutely do, you're not gonna get around to all of them. I did 6, I think, and like 3 of them I didn't even like look at that quarter. I'm like, okay, that was way too many goals, right? So 2 is the best, maybe 3 maximum. These are your priority goals that you actually think about, like what activity do I have to do on a weekly basis, and who do I actually stay in constant contact with and tell them, hey, like I'm doing this, let's go for a run together, let's do an activity together so that I can work towards this goal. 3 is probably the maximum per pillar, right? Because then of course I've got my personal down here, and it's one thing is to cook better and have better personal relationships. And you know, Sonia's been enrolled in part of that. We cooked at my house a month ago. That was awesome, right? That was also a dinner with my family, so I got to connect more with my family that day, and I didn't do emails for 2 hours. So there's ways for the goals to actually combine, of course, right? So yeah, once you have them all down, you'll find creative ways to basically plan your life around what you really care about and what you're focused on and who to kind of have part of that. Like, it's all about who's around you, right? That's really what inspires you, right? And that's, again, back to my mission statement, like, bless you. Inspiring people that are like-minded and connecting people is really what sparks creativity and a good life, right? That's I'm a firm believer of that. So that's a bit of the whole working model. It's a lot to sort of take in, but I'm happy to share this with you, obviously. And yeah, I mean, give it a go whenever you have a free weekend, or maybe at the end of this quarter when July starts. It's the start of Q3. give it a go. It's really, really rewarding. Now just some really simple stuff. I'm just going to share some habits that I do on a daily basis. Sometimes I don't do all the habits. Sometimes I do. But there's sort of intents that I do that, link towards that 10-year vision. And, first thing is, you guys have probably heard of it, especially from the video you shared with us, David, a little while ago. Drink a big glass of water. It just helps your brain think better. You're dehydrated when you sleep. So just you wake up, chug one big glass of water, and just start your day. And obviously throughout the day, have I think 3 glasses, what they say. I do a lot of reflection. So I do the 5-minute journal, which actually Chris, out of all people, kind of inspired me to do it. I was doing a different kind of self-reflection, but this is a really cool way of just asking you, when you wake up, what are the 3 things that you're grateful for? Right? Just write them down. What are some affirmations?
Connor said that too.
Yeah, Connor Beaton as well. What are 3 affirmations, like things that you just say to yourself to pump yourself up? Like, I'm an awesome athlete, I'm really smart, I'm a great traveler, I'm a great friend. It just kind of helps to tell yourself things that you're awesome at or that you really like. Because, I don't know, it's some psychological things I'm not going to get into, but it does help. And I think the coolest part of that too is you kind of ask yourself, what are 3 things that will make today really epic? Right? And you kind of write 3 things. And then at the end of the day, you write down 3 things that were amazing today. And more often than not, you'll actually see that there's a match between what you set out to do that day and what happened. And you can get really creative and think big. And honestly, there's something there that when you set an intent, and then you see that you actually fulfill it, it's pretty amazing. So it's a 5-minute thing. So yeah, that's something that I do in the morning. I try to do 15 minutes of reading. I didn't do it today. I didn't get enough sleep. But I try to do that. And then I'd say 15 minutes of undesirable activities, meaning that in the morning, your brain is the most fresh. At least in my opinion, we've had the debate of it being maybe more of a thing at night. At least with me, it's in the morning. So if I have like accounting, or I've got to sign up for something, or something that's tedious, or like I've got to write an essay, or I've got to write a business plan, it's in those first 15 minutes. No distractions, brain is fresh, and I'm just focused, right? So if you have things that you've seen or kind of keep falling off the side of your desk, and you're trying to do it at like 3 p.m. after you've had a coffee and met a friend, and you've done once you're wired in the afternoon and like distracted, there's no way you're gonna get done anything that's kind of tedious or that requires a lot of focus. So I do it in the morning, and then I try to do exercise. I try to laugh in the morning, so I watch a show. I was watching How I Met Your Mother for a while. Now I'm watching Game of Thrones, so I'm not exactly laughing, but it's a little bit different.
Kind of
but
weird if you were laughing.
Yeah, but you're entertaining yourself, right? Which I think is important. I try to do a bit of stretching in the morning, a bit of my meditation, and then while I'm in transit, I have an audiobook in, so I'm learning something. So an important part of your day is you have all these dead spots, right? Like you're in transit. Maybe you're just like in the washroom doing nothing.
You can meditate while you're in transit. It's actually perfect.
Yeah. So
I meditate when I'm in the washroom.
nice. Yeah. So if it's meditation or if it's like reading a book or just taking in information, taking care of yourself, it's an awesome thing to do, right? So things that I try to do. And then at lunch, and I've been really bad at this. This is a new thing that I just put in. I try to do at lunch like one personal to do. So if you have your to-do list and you freaking never get around to it, especially like personal stuff, like they're kind of like errands. I try to like do at least one when I'm like having lunch. I unplug out of work and I try to just like I have to call my grandma, which I still haven't done. It's not gonna happen at lunch. It'll happen on the weekend, I hope. Or I have to book a flight somewhere, or I have to wish someone a happy birthday, whatever it might be, right? Somewhere, yeah. Ooh. I try to do things that give back to myself, right? And then as far as like daily workflow, like emails are a thing that can literally you can be a slave to them all day. Tim Ferriss and a lot of other like really great entrepreneurs, they try to batch them. So they say, I only check emails like 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. for example. In between, like they just don't do it, right? Which,
For me, like that, I did that when I was working at another company, and it really, really helped. It's like focused activities.
Yeah.
I can't do them if I'm constantly being expected to respond to people. Right
Yeah, 'cause emails are kind of pulling you in different directions. Like they don't care anything about your time; they're just pulling you, right?
That's part of being a community manager.
But you're right. If you're doing something that's more customer service related, you can't really do that. But there are ways to at least batch them, where like maybe check them every 90 minutes instead of like literally every 2 seconds. Kind of you keep checking it. Like don't do that. Turn off your notifications. Be really focused, but have your schedule for it.
Yeah.
It's really important. And then, even just work that you do. Carve out 90 days for business plan. 2 hours for a call or 2 hours for a report. Yeah, isolate yourself. Do whatever you can to be super focused because, multitasking and distraction is the death of, I think, everything. Like, if you can be very good at having the right mindset in the way you work, and also keep in mind, like, when you know that what you're doing today affects where you're going to be in 10 years, there's a lot of intent and motivation behind that, and that's why I personally can be very focused because I understand like where it's all going. It's like with a company. If you don't know where you're going in the future, it's very hard to do like any activity because you don't really see the meaning behind it and you're a little bit confused. So this is all about like having a direction and a conviction to get there and then just doing it in a very focused way, in a way that you enjoy. I've got also at the bottom, by the way, some recommended resources. So The Power of Habit. Or Essentialism. Essentialism especially is a book that I cannot stop raving about. It's so good. The guy just talks about like how do you make everything in your life that you do essential? Like how do you ignore the trivial many and focus on the vital few? And he gives like just great examples of like really famous people, like how they have their non-negotiables on what things they say no to, what things they absolutely say yes to. And he'll even give you tips on like how to say no properly and like after reading that book, life is all about saying no. It's the way I interpreted it. Saying no to the things that really don't add value to you. But the only way you actually know what adds value to you is knowing what your goals are. If you don't if you don't have a game plan, it's so easy to just say yes to everything. And like guys, I'm guilty of saying yes more than I should. Everyone is. But if you're consciously aware that like, man, if you can just be more focused and more intentful in what you do, you're just going to be less stressed, less busy, you're going to perform better, and you're going to just be a happy person. So I think that is like the ultimate life skill of the 21st century, especially with all the distractions we're in, with
like
technology.
Our industry too, like
especially our industry.
Social media, it's like
social media.
Distracting.
Yeah, so how do you use those things productively, right? And how do you really stay focused? And here's just some resources for you guys to look at later on, just around the goal setting and mindset. There's the Lululemon worksheets that I have, and I think I sent some of you guys those. I think it was like back in January. I have them still if you want them. Some really good books as well. I'm actually currently doing a course called The 90-Day Year by Todd Herman. He's got a module online which just tells you about how to split up your day into 90-day increments. It's really interesting. A whole bunch of them there. Lewis Howe School of Greatness. And I've got a few articles online on my LinkedIn that kind of summarize these points up here.
He's saying I should never read alone, but I like it alone.
Never Read Alone is a freaking incredible book as well. I'm actually rereading it right now. I never really reread books, although I should. This is the one I'm rereading. It's great. It really is about the ultimate way of networking. It's audio book, and now you can actually listen to them. Some productivity apps, the Day One journaling app, the 5-minute journal. There's a couple really great meditation apps. I haven't used as much, but I do use them from time to time on Vana and Headspace, and some really cool podcasts down here just around. These are more entrepreneurship podcasts, but if you guys want to talk about podcasts, I've got lots of recommendations. With that, sorry?
Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah, what does he talk about?
Meditation.
Oh, cool. There you go.
Floats.
Nice.
Paul, you're supposed to be reading my book.
I think we got all learned. Huh?
You're supposed to be reading my book.
Yeah, I've got a lot of books to read. That's it. Lots of information. Again, expectations not to do all of this in an afternoon. It literally takes your whole life to at least build a foundation, and like every 90 days you are tweaking it. And I found that if you can have this, you really feel like you have control of your life. And it just, it's a way to fulfill your potential, right? So hopefully you guys drew some interesting facts and tactics to help you really get to where you want to go, right? At the end of the day, I want to inspire you to be your best and be around the best and do something that you're really passionate about, right? Hopefully this is a way for you to sort of keep yourself accountable and know who you want to be around and how you want to grow. And again, have that 10-year vision. Think of that perfect day and everything you do today will, I think, make a lot more sense and be a lot more exciting. Thank you.
Your contact details on there.
Huh?
You put your contact details on there.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know how to reach me.